push the button there.
Is that working now?
And we'll proceed.
Great. So I'm going to pull up my presentation here. Let's do that first. Oh, it's going to steal my... You know what I might do? Rosa, that might just be easier. Okay.
Can I get you to select admit so that Counselor Skills can open?
I will, absolutely. And then I will just share it this way. Where's my... Is it going to do? Let me do my PowerPoint. Oh, okay. This is what I'll... My window. There we go. Very good. Okay. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Hello, Mayor and all of Council. It's been a couple years since I presented here, and I think the last time we were all stuck at home. So tonight it looks like there's just a couple of us stuck at home. So my name is Jennifer Massig. I'm the CEO of Magna Engineering Services. I'm hoping you've kind of seen Magna in the last couple of years, kind of in and out of council presentations and things like that, usually through Mr. Pucci. Tonight with me, I have my senior engineer, Elizabeth Calvin, give it away, and the project manager, Brad Cripps, for the Innovative Wastewater Project. And we're missing Dr. Skor-Bogatov. He's the one who's actually in charge of the subsurface wastewater treatment component, but he came out last time, so we kind of mix up until we get started who comes out. So we just have a really short presentation tonight. So really it was just a quick reminder of kind of what we're doing here, and then jumping into some of the things that have been changed in the project. So kind of the interesting steps that I wanted you to hear about. So these next two slides that you would have seen in your council package, very similar. The big difference between them is how we're looking at doing some of the value engineering with these concepts. The important thing to note is the location, which is using the decommissioned tank site by the Moresby Trail, but this is actually the city-owned portion of that. And what we're looking at doing is we were looking for a site that had less uncertainty. So what that meant is we were looking for something that had better access, power access to it, and also was something closer to wastewater infrastructure, which is some of the issues we're having with some of the other sites in the community. So the idea with doing that is we only need a portion of the decommissioned tank site for the initial pilot component. So we'll start working on the east end of the site for the small pilot component, and then we look at the ultimate future build. We'll be expanding and using probably the remainder of the whole site out to the west end. Of note, it is between, so you're looking at it south of the dog trail right now in the Moresby Park Trail, so it doesn't impact any of the trails or the park itself, and we'll be doing that between that and the highway. So we're really just right on top of where the tank infrastructure was removed is the area that we'll be using, or where we're proposing to use for the pilot site. So this first concept, we're actually hoping to do mostly gravity infrastructure. So what we're looking at doing is potentially putting in a new manhole that would be right beside the location, just on the very eastern edge. The difference between this one and the next one is if that doesn't seem like a cost feasible option, as we all know, looking at the pipe in front of me here, infrastructure in Prince Rupert has been around for a while. So cutting into a line to put in a new manhole may not be the most cost-effective way. So we're going to be weighing that out behind tying into an existing manhole, but then doing a little bit of pumping. Regardless, it is a very minimal amount of pumping that we're looking at. It may tie into my next slide that is discussing what the benefits are to the type of technology that we're working with. And if you haven't seen before, this Magna biofilter wetland system is about treating wastewater to the same quality as a traditional mechanical plant, but doing it with passive subsurface wetlands. So when we're talking about what we're looking at doing with the pilot site, we're really proving out not that the technology works. We know it works. There are applications in Alberta and across the world, but they're a unique technology, which means in every community, we design them very specific to the community. Prince Rupert a community that gets a lot of rainfall. It exists at a certain elevation where temperature gradient can be quite different. Now, we tend to all flush the toilet the same way, so believe it or not, the biology aspect of it is the same wherever we put it in the world. But when we come to those other environmental components, we do want to size them differently in each community that we're in. So this pilot is to kind of set those parameters for any future applications we're doing for the rest of the city. So looking at that ultimate condition. So that's the number one priority for this pilot site. The second is you're kind of looking at that second reduced operational cost. This was really important to Prince Rupert, that whatever you're getting for wastewater treatment, it's not increasing the operator level that's required so that your existing operators can be operating and maintaining them. We actually did some site tours today with your local Matt Kalani office, who was walking us over the new site. And then we also went down and we're looking at the Almanika lift station, and we were talking to them about, they were asking us like, well, what is the operational aspects of this? And we're like, the same as your lift station. It's meant to be a passive treatment, and that keeps the operator level really low. And that was an important thing when we started this with the kind of what does Prince Rupert need for ultimate wastewater treatment. The other thing that we really liked about the location in Moresby Trail is it is an environmentally friendly, and you can see the biodiversity on them. When this is finished, the vertical portion of it, which is the first part of the wetlands, will look like a little mini forest. The horizontal component will look like a shrub. Actually, if you walk the Moresby Trail and you look into where the tanks are sitting now, there's like, it looks like a kind of like a shrubbery grass meadow. That is exactly what the top of the horizontal flow wetland looks like. So you've got that combination of them. We always talked about including some type of educational component. So you've got people that are out enjoying nature in Moresby Trail, and now they're reading a sign, learning about how the city of Prince Rupert is looking at naturalized treatment for wastewater. So the whole integration, I think, it's a fantastic fit. The facility themselves, we always talk about big for biodiversity, pollinators, kind of that's the type of environment that you're going to see when we're finished out there. So, and because that's the kind of the last line talking about the niche habitat for microorganisms and supporting the kind of pollinator environment. And the last slide that I have on here is just talking a little bit about the updated schedule. Some of the things that got us to where we are now, where we're recommending this location, has to do with a lot of uncertainties that came up throughout the process that had nothing to do with the technology, but a lot to do with working in the Prince Rupert. And we've loved working in Prince Rupert the last couple of years. One of the things we've learned, and everyone always looks at us like, that's what it's like working in Prince Rupert, is between the province and the federal government. Sometimes approval processes and other things come up that maybe weren't as obvious in the beginning, and we're seeing a lot of uncertainties. And the new location for the pilot removes all those uncertainties by having it in a city-owned facility, having it on where it was decommissioned tank location. There's not a lot of things that could go on that site. Wastewater treatment infrastructure is one of them that can. So that was a great win. And it allows us to be able to look at a schedule like this and reduce a lot of those uncertainties. So what you're looking at here is a really good rule of thumb. It could even be a shorter schedule, but in general, aside from weather, there's not a lot that could impact this. And that was a big benefit of having it at the we're calling it the Moresby site right now. And with that, I'm going to questions.
Councillor Cunningham.
A couple of questions. Is this wetland concept, being used in any other areas where the precipitation's the same as Rupert?
The precipitation in Rupert is actually extremely unique. So it's definitely on the far side of it. One of the things is the technology comes from a stormwater management design. So we're coming at it from a stormwater perspective and converting it into a wastewater treatment. So where Magna itself that's our specialty, is looking at it from the stormwater lens. So all that stormwater does from the component of the facility itself is it just ensures that anything that's falling on the site is well managed from a drainage perspective. One of the things about this location is we have chosen a location that is in one of your separated sewer catchments. So we do have modeling and metering location in that area, and it's not as extreme as a difference as it will be on other sites. So we're on purpose kind of picking the pilot one as one that has less additional inflow application, but we will be managing the site from a drainage perspective.
Because you'll be getting a lot of precipient inflow from just the area around there.
Exactly. And that's what, so that is the most important part of the design because of the rainfall, is actually not what's coming in from the wastewater system. It'll be managing the site itself. And I was hoping to give you some confidence that we're coming at it from a stormwater perspective. So, yeah.
Okay, and how about non-biodegradable products that come in with the sewage?
Thank you for that question. One of the first steps in the design is actually a fine screening. So we will be screening off the larger, some of the larger particulate. So one of the actual single most complicated operator aspect of it is there will be some solids that will be managed on site that will probably have maybe a weekly or monthly. They're actually dried down into like a little tiny cake. We've used them. It's a very small, fine screen. It's about 2 feet by 4 feet in size that just sits just before the water goes into the lift station before it gets dosed onto the wetlands. And there will be a little bit of management that will take care of all those friendly bits.
So when you say it'll be like dried,
Yeah.
how is it, an artificial heating system or something like
No,
that?
it's a screw press. So it's
Okay.
squeezed down to something that's a little thicker than toothpaste.
And that would just go to our dump?
Yes, absolutely. Just could be landfilled. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you for your presentation. So, like I said, I understand it's a pilot project. So, when we treat the wastewater, right, and we have the treated water there, so that water go back to house, like in the house, we can use that one water again to the households.
It could be sorry, I'm going to sneeze. It's meeting the treated effluent requirements to be released back to the ocean. So right now, the pilot itself will re-enter the sewage system. It is clean enough to be used for reuse. Household reuse is a bit of a line. So we tend to say, like, if you're using it for irrigation, different types of processed water, you can do that very easily. Using it for households ends up just being a little more, to be honest, it's just policy that gets in the way of some of it, but it is water use. It is a quality that you could use for water reuse. If that's what you're
Can you
asking.
put our other people back, just in
Oh.
case there's a question?
Oh, yes.
Stop showing the screen.
Yeah, and I might as well, because I'm just saying questions, right? So
No,
let's do that.
no hands. Good. Okay, any other? Councillor 80.
Thanks for the presentation. I've been a part of hearing about this process for a long time now. It feels like a long time, and I've always been excited by the potential for it in three ways. Two ways that I've been aware of, and then you've just kind of given me another one. The economics of it, with respect to our costs in dealing with the issue, the environmentally friendly nature of it, which I think it's useful for us, but I think it's also a model for other places as well. And the one that you kind of added to that is I think specific to the new location, and that's the educational potential of it, because that it's more accessible. If I was wanting to bring some kids in and show them how this works, it's much easier to do that in the Moresby area than it would have been up behind Dominica. So I think I'm excited about all those. I do have a couple of questions. One is about the long-term science. We've heard that this is not unique to us, that this technology has been applied elsewhere, has been applied successfully. What do we know about what it looks like, or what can we project about what it looks like for a location like this 50 years down the road? Because I think some people have expressed a concern that it might be good for a few years, but what happens further down the road in terms of its continued environmental quality? So that's my first question. Maybe I'll come back after.
Thank you very much for the questions. I think we get asked this a lot. I think there's a couple elements that it's kind of like a three-way response. First of all, in answer to the life cycle question, you've got these, elsewhere in the world, how long have they lasted? What does that look like? We've seen these in 25 to 50 year applications where they've been completely left alone, which means they've been built by, often in the northern United States, by a new residential community that decided to do wastewater instead of tying into the community system. And then they've kind of left. The Homeowners Association has dissolved. People kept sending wastewater to it. It disappeared. Nobody worried about it. So what we're seeing is they're still operating after that many years, slows down a little bit without proper maintenance and just checking on piping and different types of infrastructure like that. What we're looking at it as is more of an active operational system. So when we looked at the cost benefit to this over long-term mechanical, we actually include the option to remove a quarter of the media every 5 to 10 years. It's not a requirement. Historically, in all the other systems, you're not seeing that happen. But we've left in that there are other reasons that you might want to replace media if you did have some type of substance or material that got added to it and you wanted to be removing it. If there was type of biofouling, you had some screening problems and something got into it that wasn't related directly to the biology of it. We had a situation on one we built last spring in Alberta where a pipe broke directly underneath the vertical flow biofilter. And that's the one of the two wetlands is the one that has piping in it. So it was the worst possible location for it to happen. It was during construction process, so it wasn't the client's cost at all. It was the contractor's cost. And we watched them within 3 days remove half the media and replace it. It cost them $27,000, and it was a system about 3 times the size of this one. So we got it all on video, and we put it all into our operation and maintenance, because originally when we had put in the cost for doing something like that, we had put in what would it look like to rebuild one. So watching this contractor go through this exercise really gave us a lot of support in what it would actually look like to kind of replace media in here. So from an operation and maintenance perspective, it was an important aspect to us to be able to let clients know, like, anything can happen. Well, how costly is it really if I ever had to do something like this? And the third component of that is when you're looking at this type of biological system, we do expect it in the operation process to use some endogenous respiration. And what we mean by that is we build them in trains. That's what you'll always see them as more than one train, because giving them rest periods is the best way to correct any type of biofouling that you would have. So what happens is you basically stop giving the bugs any food, they eat each other, and they basically open up a lot of the void spaces. There's things that we do in the system to build that. So the plants actually don't add any treatment component to it, but the roots from those plants add additional void space and basically pathways for the biology to reattach. And when you go through that endogenous respiration, that actually eats itself. It's similar to when you have a septic field. And sometimes they'll say, if you have a lot of biofouling in your drain field, just turn it off for a while, build one next to it, come back 5 years later, and the other one, all the void spaces have opened up again. So that endogenous respiration process is part of the operation and maintenance, just to ensure that you're constantly keeping those void spaces open over the long term.
Councillor.
You just made me think about grade 8 social studies lessons with leaving one field fallow for on a cyclical basis. Yeah. So that wasn't my next question though. I guess the other concern would be that it's in a well-attended, beautiful, natural setting with, as you alluded to, trails and walking trails. And in a world where anything that could go wrong sometimes does, what are the assurances that if there are breakdowns or problems, that won't have adverse impact on that natural environment around it?
When we look at that, there's a couple options that could cause, a couple risks that could impact the environment. Number one would be a spill type of scenario, that it actually backs up enough that it would fill and then spill into the natural environment. So the systems are actually designed with additional, we call them viewports. So they're in the wetland so that you can actually see into the bottom or do backflowing. These have the add-on effect is if the water rises in the wetland too much, they actually are a short circuit into the piping in the bottom. So we've done that on purpose, and it's actually part of that operation and maintenance. If we tell an operator you only have to come by once in a while, we have to ensure that in that period of time between them attending the site, the system needs to be able to take care of its own issues. So that's the first one would be if you were ever to have something to back up that would cause it to fill and spill. So we actually add elements to ensure that doesn't happen. The second component would be around the idea that there is some, I'm trying to think of the other environmental risks outward of it. Probably, I think that leaking is the only one I can think of. However, the one I was thinking of is the interaction. So someone walking, some children or some teenagers or dogs or anything else have decided they want to explore the site. So what they do, the one that is on the ski hill in Bridger Bowl, Montana, that's up on the hill, is just got basically a wildlife fence around it. And something that you can see through it, you can access it, you can do all those different kinds of things. You can walk up to the edge of it, read signs about it, but it just keeps skiers and any of that large nature from entering it. So we would probably do something, but we'd like to work with your team to say, well, what would be a night like there? They've used nice black powder coated kind of fencing. It doesn't have to be too high. Theirs is actually quite high because some of the animals around the area can jump over it. We probably may not have to worry about that as much here, but we would just do an aesthetic type of fence. There's nothing you can really do that's negative to it. The worst thing that could happen is maybe digging a hole in it, like when a puppy might dig up a little bit. The operator comes by the next week. They look over, they're like, why is there a pile of mulch over there? It looks like it's been disturbed, just like in the bottom of a forest floor. They might kick it with their shoe. Because you can walk over on top of this, no problem, because everything's happening subsurface. You can't fall through it or anything like that. So we do those things to keep people, kind of just deter them from wandering around and maybe digging a hole on it. But in general, you don't actually have to put a lot to it. And if anything, put a sign up saying it's an active wastewater treatment. So people might be less likely to walk onto the top of it.
Maybe some imagery about compressed cakes and so on.
Exactly.
Councillor Niche.
Thanks for the presentation. Being that this is proven technology, I guess, in other places, is there something that you anticipate being an issue with all the water that we have here?
Absolutely. The biggest thing is when we design these, there's different flow scenarios that we use for picking the footprint for it. So we know exactly how much we need to deal with. Basically, we all generally flush the toilet about the same average amount of times per day. So we know that there's a certain footprint we need to actually do the treatment of the wastewater component itself. However, when you're dealing with an environment where there is could be a substantial input of infiltration, that might govern the size of them. So right now, that is governing the size in Prince Rupert because we're overcompensating for that infiltration. So what we're really looking forward to, hopefully, is being able to shrink the footprint size we're using now, which is closer to a footprint we would use elsewhere. So we're kind of coming at it from, because it's a pilot, we want to make sure it's a little bigger because it is a little smaller flow that we're dealing with the hopes and the way that we always talk about this. If we can put more flow through that pilot than we originally intended, that would be the ideal outcome. So they are bigger than we expect them to be long-term when we're designing them across the rest of the community.
So what you're saying is water's a good thing? Like this could potentially work better than, because you're automatically getting that water to flush the system. Is that what I'm?
Sort of. The better way to say it is this type of system is not impacted by high dilution.
Okay.
So however, we are making them a little bigger in Prince Rupert. They don't need to be, but because we just want to make sure that they're carrying the amount of flow that we're getting from rainfall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Cunningham.
Just a follow-up question.
Yeah.
How do you determine the input? Like how many households, toilets, sinks, bathtubs, showers?
Well, there's the easy direct way, and then there's the preferable way. We know, there's a lot of statistics and data around how a North American uses their wastewater. So we have an idea of, you've got this many homes in North America, you've got this many. So we know in Prince Rupert, if we can identify an average of how many people live in each home and how many homes are on that system, we can come up with a pretty good estimate of what we imagine the wastewater would be through that system. After we do that, we get that kind of on an average day. We times it by a bunch of numbers to get the worst possible hour. And that worst possible hour is Christmas Day, just after dinner, everyone's home, and they all have gone to the washroom before finishing the day. So all wastewater systems are designed on that peak hour. However, what we really like to do is get 5 years of monitoring data. So probably what will happen as an outcome of this project is we will do the pilot based on that initial estimate I was telling you about. We'll use the numbers, the number of homes. And then once we get into, if this is something that we all believe is the best answer for Prince Rupert, we'll sit down with your staff team. We'll be like, okay, let's start monitoring some locations in the community where we'd like to see these, and let's get some real-time data for what the flow is for these our future facilities. So we do it out one of two ways.
So on, say there's an average of 5,000 households in Prince Rupert.
Right.
How many, hypothetically, how many wetland areas would you need?
It's a square footage. So what we do is, the nice thing about them is they can go anywhere. So if you take an average of about 2 square meters per population, we just have to split that kind of like 10,000, or it would be actually times population, not per household, is the important part of it. And you can put those anywhere across the city of Prince Rupert. And that was the big thing about this type of technology. So we don't have to get all the piping to one location to build a wastewater treatment plant. We can actually put these facilities at different locations across Prince Rupert where it makes the most sense, because that's already where you're bringing the wastewater.
Councillor Niche.
Just thought of one more question. I've seen shows on TV where sewer systems are impacted by wipes. Now, and it's like such a huge problem across everywhere. I mean, you're pulling these massive wads of wipes out of sewer systems. So is there any impact on this system with that?
No, you nailed exactly why we do fine screening at the front end. Because as much as we can tell people that, hey, only put biological things down there, but my joke is always tampons and condoms, but now wipes is going to go on my list as the things that foul all of my wastewater systems. But we do the fine screening in order to pull all of those things out that can't go through the system. So, yeah.
A friend of mine's kid flushed a sheet down the toilet. He was 2, took a lot of flushes.
I can't believe it went down. That's the impressive
did.
part.
Dr. Buchan, I'm going to turn to Director Pucci and see if he has anything else he'd like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think it was a great presentation. Thank you very much, Jen. The only one thing I just want to add is that we are working on our infrastructure over the next few years, and we're working to do separation as much as possible. That will concentrate the flows. Our biggest issue, as Jen was saying, is that we have a lot of I&I and a lot of storm that's tied in. So as we go through the system and making infrastructure upgrades, we will be separating, which then will concentrate flows, which will be better for this process. But worst case scenario is that we have looked at this entire city as if it was as it is today. So if we narrow flows, we're just going to be in better shape, which is great for everybody. It is massive cost savings. Massive savings on operations and maintenance overall. So we're happy to move forward with this pilot project, and as council is aware, the pilot project is fully funded through grants. So we are very fortunate with that as well. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you very much. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there today.
Great. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Great presentation. All right, next up on the agenda, our very own Crime Stoppers. Come on forward. I was teasing Mr. Cook just a little bit earlier. Many, many years he sat over there. I think it must have been hard for him to resist when he came through the door.
Right, 16 years.
16 years. There you go. All right. Introduce both of yourselves and your team. And
okay. I'm Lonnie Wishart, and David Cook and John Patterson are here today to represent Crime Stoppers, Prince Rupert Crime Stoppers. I'd like to thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us here this evening. And also, I'd like to thank you for the Community Enhancement Grant that covers the cost of our monthly meetings. Without that grant, we wouldn't be able to afford a place to meet. So thank you for that. I just wanted to draw awareness tonight that January is National Crime Stoppers Month. We're basically just trying to draw awareness. Prince Rupert Crime Stoppers is actually the last branch of Crime Stoppers between here and Prince George now. All other branches closed during COVID, lack of volunteers. Ongoing theme, I think, with almost every nonprofit now is the lack of volunteers. So we are just trying to draw awareness that we're still here and we're still working to try and keep the community safe. We've got fridge magnets for everybody because everyone has fridges. So we'll leave those there to hand out. So yeah, basically we're just here to draw awareness that we're still here. And if people want to report tips, they just call 1-800-222-TIPS. Yeah, and thanks for letting us come. David, I know you had a couple things you wanted to say.
Well, I was just going to mention.
You want
that,
to pass
Do
that
you wanna-
microphone over to
Does
him?
it slide? There we go.
Yeah.
Do I press anything?
Nope.
No,
it's all
you're
fired.
good to go.
Okay. Well, I was just going to mention that we're looking for volunteers. And since I've been in Crime Stoppers, I've had a terrific time as a volunteer. I've done all sorts of really interesting things. First of all, I had a trip on the RCMP boat, the Inkster, I believe, and that was from Prince Rupert up to Lac Quelin, and treated like royalty on that cruise. It's really something. And then we've made trips to Skidegate to help them develop their own Crime Stopper program. And that involved a nice trip right from Seal Cove in the RCMP aircraft, which started off on land and then went down into the water and flew over there and landed. And again, we're treated like royalty. You know, just amazing. We had a absolutely fantastic dinner there in the community hall in Skidegate. So another one was we did the Christmas courtesy check stop, and that was in front of Safeway. And we were treated as if we were members of the RCMP almost. And that was an amazing experience because it was right in the middle of a really big gale. And it practically blew away our tent. But still, it was a really exciting time. So, you know, for somebody who's had a working life and then maybe is retired and looking for something to do, Crime Stoppers is a really great experience. And you want respect, you will get respect as a member of Crime Stoppers.
So if somebody's interested in joining you, what do they need to do?
They just have to reach out. They just have to reach out to myself or David Cook, and it's 1 hour a month. That's your time commitment, except for CFest, because we do try to pull stuff together. Like maybe you might have to, you know, hand out some fridge magnets, some tattoos to little kids and stuff at CFest. But other than that, it's pretty low impact on your time, but big impact in the community, I think. Just from being a part of the organization, I know we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. Like David suggested, like or talked about when we went to Skidegate, we were invited to the feast. We presented at the feast, and I know we got tons of great feedback back from Haida Gwaii. So it was really
And
worthwhile.
I got a gift blanket with the RCMP logo on it, which is really nice to get.
Nice. Nice.
I'm joining.
Any questions from council or comments? Councillor 80.
Thanks. I just want to say I appreciate the work that you do, the existence of the organization. As you say, with COVID and what have you, it's kind of, organizations continue despite the odds sometimes. And we hear all from many different organizations that getting volunteers is a real challenge now. So I guess what I'm interested in, I mean, I have my own perception of what Crime Stoppers is, and why it matters, but I'm interested in how you might express, in what way is the community better off with Crime Stoppers and with a healthy volunteer force compared to if it didn't have that?
I can answer that. Basically, we're all like family. We're in a small community. I know my neighbors. I know I say good morning every morning to my neighbors. And sometimes it's not about, it's unsafe behavior. If I see a friend, say, and they're in a situation and they need help, but it might put me at jeopardy, to approach them, I can reach out to the RCMP anonymously. I can say, hey, I saw this person dealing prescription drugs out of the side of their house. Can you check this out? I'm not endangering myself. It might be getting them the help they need. And it's keeping everybody safe. Because I know I've had situations where I've phoned the RCMP and I've said, hey, I didn't use Crime Stoppers, and I probably should have, because I've openly seen kids playing with matches under the courthouse trees, and I called the RCMP because I was scared to approach the kids myself because they were teenagers. Like there was like 5 or 6 of them. But I called the RCMP. I probably could have called Crime Stoppers, but I was like, hey, I'm just going to call the non-emergency number because I'm fairly, I wasn't too worried about my safety. But in the case of drugs or crime, like we're a port. At the end of the day, we are a port. We do have crime. And it's a safe way for people to report it, especially since we're all kind of tight-knit and we're small. But we're actually with Prince Rupert Crime Stoppers, we're looking at probably changing the name because they're looking at us like a pilot, and they're talking about trying to get us to be like all of northern BC, basically from here to Prince George.
Well,
So we're trying to get more volunteers, and we're trying to get other community volunteers too. So like maybe Terrace, maybe Kitimat, maybe some in Haida Gwaii, and try and get a little organization happening of this little corner. That's kind of the ultimate goal, I think, with the team that we've been talking about. Because we're also working on trying to restore a 1948 police car. So there's lots of things that we're working on as a group, and there's only 7 of us. So it's super small, and so we really do need more, hands on deck.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you.
great.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is a report from the city manager. As before I turn it over to Dr. Buchan, a couple of comments I want to make. One is a reminder that in committee of the whole, we don't pass anything on a binding basis. We can make recommendations back to the council meeting. Secondly, I'm very thankful for the overall putting together of this council policy binder. I think it's just a big step in the right direction. But I think tonight, I'd like us to contemplate this as just a step. There'll be some suggestions around some cleaning up of the existing policy. But I believe that council, in the end, needs to strike a subcommittee who will take some time over time to thoughtfully look through, now that the policies have been assembled, thoughtfully look at what could be removed, what could be changed, what's missing, what could be added. So I guess what the stage I'm trying to set is I'm not anticipating we're going to do all that work tonight, but rather we can begin on the journey. Dr. Buchan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I have similar thoughts to what you just shared with the council, Mr. Mayor. I mean, if the substantive aspects of the policies were just fine right now and everybody agreed to them, then I think you could make a recommendation from committee to council to adopt. If there are more detailed discussions and debate and analyses, then I think a subcommittee is a good way to go. It's pretty difficult to use a committee of the whole in a detailed way in terms of trying to wordsmith documents, and so I think that's probably a good idea. I would just note that one of the policies that's presented to you, not in the list but in the package, shouldn't be there because it's obsolete. It's replaced by a bylaw, and that's Gov 05-2023, the council indemnity policy. That's been replaced with a bylaw that deals with indemnity on an ongoing basis. And the other one, Gov 18-2023, disposal of goods, is actually it should be pulled because it's not done with staff's work. That's an oversight on my part. I thought it was finished, but there's still some more discussion that needs to occur on that at the staff level. I would note that we don't know when the last time any council has had a look at all of its policies. There appear to be some dates where there's been some policy work in the past, so we've endeavored to pull all of them that we can find together so they're inventoried and centralized and put them into current format. The changes that we've made initially here are really, there's only, aside from formatting change, two of them have are some minor changes and 4 are more substantive. So if you wanted to go to a recommendation that this simply go to a subcommittee, that might be time saving at this point. Or if you want, we can go through the 4 policies that have major changes to them for discussion.
I'm quite content with either approach. I think regardless of what we recommend changing tonight, we'll still want a subcommittee to go through the entire bundle. But there's some recommendations made here tonight that if council wants to deal with, certainly all the sort of wordsmithing pieces, the changes of language and grammar and whatever that have been done, I think council can deal with tonight. And I don't know, council, I'll take it from you on how deep you want to go into specific policies. Councillor Niche.
I think a subcommittee to have a good look at this all together would be probably a good thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be rather prudent, like if we're gonna get a subcommittee to look at it, rather get them to look at it.
Okay. Who would, Councillor Adey?
I agree with the approach. I'm just wondering whether you identified the 4 that have received some more substantive changes. I'm wondering whether you would see that it would be good for a subcommittee of that kind to kind of deal with those as a more immediate concern, to fast track those a little bit more than the rest of the package as a whole.
Your worship, I don't see this as time urgent. And if you're going to strike a subcommittee to work on this, I think that's probably the most efficient way, is just to go there directly. The 4 with the more substantive, that I think that the committee should very ably be able to deal with those.
Low hanging fruit. All right. Are there? Can I ask now in the room? Are there volunteers that would be interested in serving on that committee? Councillor Cunningham. Oh, Councillor Forrester, I had you had no choice whether you know it or not. Councillor Forrester, is it Councillor Niche? Okay, I've got Cunningham and myself. We have to be careful how we do this because we don't want to have council meetings away from council meetings. But 3 max. So anyone, we'll use those names. We'll make sure it's never more than 3 at a time. How's that sound? All right. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? All right, Councillor.
I can move that.
Okay, Councillor Skelton Morven and Councillor Forster. I'm biasing towards the ones that are on screen only because they often got missed. So moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. So I believe that brings us to, questions, inquiries from members of council? No? Councillor Randawa.
Yeah, uh, last month I asked a question about ICBC letter for the service in our town. We got any update from that?
Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, Director Miller can speak to that.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After an exhaustive search of the ICBC website and the world, thanks to our local insurance friends, I have been finally able to find someone at ICBC to speak with. So I have a call scheduled for this week to get to the bottom of how we can fix the situation.
Good.
And
anything else?
Yeah, like we have a big event, All Native tournament coming next month. So we all set for that, like our staff.
Sorry, what's coming next month?
All Native tournament, basketball.
Yeah.
So like we all set for that.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn and convene the regular council meeting. Councillors Cunningham, Councillors Niche, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. For those of you that have come to the committee of the whole, please don't feel the need to stick around. If you want to stay, you can stay, but our feelings aren't hurt if you leave. So, as you wish. All right. With that, I will call the regular council meeting of Monday, the January 22nd order. We do have one late item to add, and that has to do with a Japanese Canadian Legacies Foundation Heritage Grant. It will be included in the agenda as item number 6D, as in Delta. And I'm not aware of any other items. Councillor Cunningham.
Did we have a small discussion on the noise bylaw added to it?
Yes, we could. Why don't we just do that under the round table? Let's. Yeah, no, that works. All right. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Councillors Cunningham and Niche. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Now is the time. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak to any item that's coming up on the agenda, make a comment to any item coming up on the agenda, you're more than welcome to come forward and do that now. I'm not seeing any motion in the audience. So with that, I will move on to the consent agenda. In the consent agenda, there are minutes of the regular meeting of January 8th. There's the development activity report, the monthly fire rescue report, council resolution status update, council calendar, report from the Director of Operations regarding Modi letter on line painting, actually, which I'm going to highlight in just a moment, a request for letter of support from the golf club, and a request for letter of support from the Prince Rupert Racquet Society. I'd entertain a motion, please, to move those all as a block. Councillor Randawa, Councillor Adey, are there any? Are you seconding? Not quite. Well, if you second it, then we can talk about pulling or to speak. All right. So the motion is seconded. Are there ones that you want to speak to directly that don't require? Anyway, go ahead, Councillor Adey. I'll determine whether we pull it or not.
I think I have some questions around the request for the Prince Rupert Racquet Society.
Okay.
So I'm wondering whether we could have a more fulsome discussion of that.
Okay.
Not that I'm not in favor, just I have some questions.
Well, ask them now. Are there any others? I'm going to ask that Director Pucci speak just momentarily to the line painting. There's not a lot to say, I don't think, but are there any others that you want to highlight? All right. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Adey.
So I guess I'm interested in a little more background on precisely what it is we're being asked to do. And the reason that I'm interested in finding out a little bit more is because this is a building that we own. And the proposal for it, I am fully supportive of. I think it would be fantastic. But it is a building that we own, and what that means is that the proposal involves some work that maybe more correctly a city decision as opposed to a tenant decision. And I'm just looking for a little more clarity from whoever can offer it to me on how we're striking that balance. And as I say, I'm asking it in the spirit of wanting to try and move it forward, but we need to do it properly.
Correct. Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of the request, as noted in the letter from Mr. Haley and the Society, the process really would be that whoever wanted the renovations, whether it doesn't matter what civic building it would be for, they would come to the city, request changes to be made through us. We would review it. There's more of a process piece. It would go in our budget requests to council. The city would make a determination as how to fund it. The city would then approve the plans and then proceed with an application of grants. It's a little backwards in the process to have the tenant seek funding. We weren't aware of the scope of the changes until receiving the plans last week, 2 weeks ago, perhaps, after the last council meeting. So it's a bit, as Councillor Adie said, the premise of what they're doing is not in question. It's the process piece, and it's similar to if, say, the Leicester Centre came to us and said, could you support a grant to fix the washrooms? It's something that we would need to look at as a civic building. So I'm not sure if that helps.
So, Councillor Nish.
Just curious as if there's a difference when these are run by societies, like for example, this racket center and the golf course. If these, if that changes it. I don't know if you guys caught that. Just talking about the difference between the way that these facilities are run, such as the golf course, the racket center. I mean, they're run by a board of people that are obviously interested in the venue and are trying to do their best to make it happen. So I know the golf course has done work, and I mean they don't come to us with every request either. So I don't know where that line is drawn with these different groups. So I'm just do they not have some free way to do things in their building that they're basically looking after on behalf of us?
Director Miller.
Thank you. I think the situation with the golf course might be slightly different. I look to the CFO to correct me on this, but I believe the golf course situation is they own part of the infrastructure and we own part of it. So it's a little bit different. The lease is specific with respect to the civic buildings, that they're city-owned buildings, so we would need to look at that. Any renovations or work done to them, we insure them. It's our insurance. So it makes it a little bit more complicated.
Your worship?
Yes, Dr. Buchan.
My understanding is that that an appropriate process has not been followed actually to this point for staff to recommend in support of a letter of support. There's issues such as the lease that would need to be revisited to see if this can be accommodated. The business plan, are there any financial implications for the city? So, at this point, maybe deferring this until staff have a chance to receive some more details so we can better understand the implications to the city. Ms. Miller, is that okay?
So, go ahead, Director.
Thank you. Yes, I have, or staff have no issue in working with the Racket Center to ensure that we can follow a proper process and make sure everything is aligned appropriately before proceeding. I would hate for an agreement to proceed to do renovations that, in fact, then we we couldn't actually do.
So I'm not sure how time sensitive it is in terms of the application of the port. Usually there's an opportunity for the letters of support to follow while the port, does their thing. Would it be acceptable to council to authorize a letter of support pending approval by staff? I'm just thinking of staff through the week or before we meet next, make the determination that it can proceed. Then it'd be nice to have the letter of support go out quickly.
Maybe it's a support in principle, and with directions for us to make sure that we have assessed implications for the city.
Support in principle pending
review by staff on implications.
So I'm going to ask for amendment to our consent agenda to pull this item from the consent agenda to be actually handled by separate resolution. Councillor Adey, Councillor Cunningham. So we'll deal with that in just a moment. We'll get rid of the consent agenda, and then we'll revisit this item, okay? Councillor Cunningham.
Like you said, is this time sensitive though?
Pardon me?
Is this an application for a grant time sensitive?
Well, the grant itself undoubtedly can. I know I've submitted grants to the port and other organizations, and then they can be followed up with the letters of support and the other documentation. So I think the project scope can get into the port. Council, I know it's a little bit of a different approach, but I know we have a representative from the Racket Center here this evening. Would council like to have any questions answered by them? If there's a motion to that effect, Councillor Cunningham.
Well, my concern is we've got a group of volunteers that are willing to do this work and get it done. And if it's time sensitive, I don't see any reason why we can't give them a letter of support, even though we haven't gone ahead with the project yet. They can always pull the grant application if they can't go ahead.
So okay. So let's not dive. Let's finish the consent agenda, and then we'll take on this issue. All right. So the only thing I had to add to was just comment actually to Director Pucci. I thought your letter was excellent. It captured, I think, what Councillor Niche in particular had raised around line painting and the concern about I think it was Councillor Niche that raised it, but regardless, I think it was extremely well written, and appreciate that. All right, with that, then with the one item pulled from the consent agenda, can we voted on pulling the item, right? Okay, so all in favor of the consent agenda as amended? Any opposed? It's carried. Okay, now back to the one item. Can I have a motion to what do I want to do? I want to ask Richard if there's any question of is there any problem with this? I want to address Councillor Cunningham's question. So I'd like a motion from council to have the representative from the Racket Center come and speak to council. All right, Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Niche, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Dr. Buchan.
Yeah, Your Worship, I think council could consider a resolution that says that to send a letter of support in principle now, and support to be full support to be determined following a staff review.
Fair enough. That just took care of it. Thank you. Thanks. That wording is critical. All right, council's all nodding. Can I have a motion to that effect, please? Councillors Adey, Councillors Niche. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you. All right. We now move on to reports. Report 6A from Planning its Development Variance Permit with a recommendation. Well, no, I'm sorry. You know what I just did? I just went into the minutes. I'm sorry. We'll take this piece of paper. That will work so much better. We have a report 6A from the Chief Financial Officer with regards to the resolution to amend the 2024 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 3526, with a recommendation that council approve increasing the Leicester Center roof replacement project scope and postpone the 3rd Avenue Fulton traffic light. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councilors Cunningham and Niche, any discussion? Councilor Niche.
Well, I guess I mean I would prefer to see the Leicester Center obviously in kept in good working condition. You know, it just like we discussed earlier there, you and I, the state of the town where you have to, rob Peter to pay Paul, and here's a prime example of, how we can't afford to do everything, and we have to steal from one bank account to pay for something that we need that money in another bank account. And to me, I can live with a flashing red light worst case scenario at the intersection versus having a leaky roof destroying a legacy building in our community. So I'm definitely all in support of doing this.
Councilor 80.
I'm also in support of it. I think the choice between the two is pretty clear. That's an easy one. I have questions around, though. There's a chart here which talks about the asset cost and the funding. So the original, and just reading through it, the original cost of the Leicester Center roof we thought was going to be $200,000. The original cost of the traffic light was $315,000. The revision now, seeing that the roof is more urgent, is now up to $1 million. And so we're looking on the funding side for where that money is going to come from. And there's a reserve surplus, $165,000. There's $515,000 of grant money and a dividend of $150,000. So I'm curious for some detail on that, and I'm asking partly because I think we don't really have a lot of choices. We have to replace the roof of the theater, but I know that there are also there have been other needs identified in the community for which money is not available, and I think there may be people that are interested in how this money materialized for this purpose in a way that makes sense.
Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, if I can just ask what this to clarify the question for me, I'm not sure exactly what's being asked.
I'm often accused at home of not being very clear. That's why I don't win the arguments very often. I'm looking at the funding for the roof. Excuse me. And the reserve surplus money, the grant money, the dividend money would not have been required if it was still only a $200,000 repair. We need more because it's not just a $200,000 repair. And so this money has been found for that purpose. And I'm curious about how that works.
Your Worship, I'm very pleased to suggest that we ask the Director of
I knew that's where we're going.
to answer
Director
that question.
Bombin. Happy birthday.
Thanks. Thank you. So there is no new money. We're actually applying for a grant for half of the project cost. All we've done is we've postponed and reallocated the money that we have placed in the budget for 3rd and Fulton. We have moved that allocation to make up our half of the Leicester Center roof in total, and we are applying for a grant at the PRPA as well, or for equal 50% in order to make up the $1,030,000 allocation. Is that helpful?
Councillor.
Thank you. That answers the question. I guess I'm left with um, the aspirational hope that that grant comes through, because I'm not sure what we do if it doesn't.
There you go. Director Bauman.
I would agree. It is an aspirational hope. It's hopes and dreams to keep a vital community asset going.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Forrester has her hand up.
Thank you, that hand. Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to check in on something, because when we were going through the budget and we were going through all of those, we heard that we had cut absolutely everything, and everything that was in the budget was a must-have. And while I'm really excited that we can put off doing the Fulton Street lights, I think many people in our community would wonder if there's other things that perhaps aren't as bad as what we once thought that we could delay.
For the purpose of the roof, or
the roof or other projects, as Councillor Adie said, how did we decide what was the biggest priority? Is there a possibility that there's other things that we could put off?
So, Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, I would characterize the choice between the lights and the roof as choosing between two must-haves. And council could be faced with circumstances that may cause you to postpone another important must-have project for one that has even greater needs. So I don't think that that I would want to characterize any of the items that were in the budget as capitalized as not being very important and in the must-have category.
Councillor Cunningham.
I think it's a cause and effect here. The light it needs to be replaced, but the effect of the roof failing on the Lester Center is a far-reaching effect than a light. Like there's other projects that could be on the cusp, but there's no question here. The Lester Center has to be protected. The asset, just the physical asset alone, if that roof fails, the whole asset's gone. So it's not even an if, and, or but. You've got to do something to save that asset. It's a complex asset. The roof, the center, the foundation, and an ongoing theater. So this perpetuates the theater versus, like Councillor Neese said, we can live with a flashing red light for another year if we have to. The light's functioning now.
So with that, all in favor? Any opposed? It is that was in favor, Councillor Forrester?
Oh yeah, I was in favor all along.
I thought so. There was just a delay with your hand coming up. Good.
Other things. Sorry.
Nope. All good. Okay, thank you. Item number 6B is a report from planning with regards to a DVP on 800 2nd Avenue West. Recommendation that council proceeds to statutory notification process for the development variance permit 2318 for 800 2nd Avenue West. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillors Adie, Councillor Randhawa. Any discussion? Councillor Neese.
Just the only discussion is, according to their plans, they wanted to have 4 travelers accommodations, and with the discussion that has been had about the province's new rules in play for Airbnbs, and that is the travelers accommodations still applicable to this project if with the new rules, or would they have to change this to 10 units instead of 6 units plus 4 travelers accommodations?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, council member. The moment the variance, as was submitted by the applicant, is for the 10 parking spots. So this variance would move ahead for that. The applicant has been communicated that is the case with the provincial legislation and how that is changing. So they would have to change their plans internally accordingly. That said, this variance they wanted to move ahead to allow for those 10 parking spots to be permitted in the current situation.
Great. Is that clear?
Did I-
Counselor.
Yeah, the only thing is where it changes is all of a sudden now you have 10 units to live in. Well, now you have less parking spots for people that potentially could be living there. I mean, I understand that this person is looking to build something that maybe would require less people driving to their home and living downtown. And I would love to see more housing, and I'd love to see the building fixed up. So, I am in support of it. It's just that, if a traveler's accommodation is 4 of the units and it's somebody coming to stay for a night here, a night there, but now this isn't allowed because of provincial rules, which means you're going to end up with 4 more units of living space, which means you're going to have 4 more potential parking spots missing for people that are there long term, is what I'm trying to get at here. So, I mean, that being said, I mean, I think any housing development in downtown is going to be more geared towards, less parking. So, I am in support of it. It's just that, it's something that we need to take into consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Well, this is the second housing project where we've been asked to waive parking regulations, and they're going to be parking on the street. And the downtown core, this particular area isn't too bad. It's not going to be affected that much. But right now, that one street already is, you've got the Moose Hall there, you've got the Highliner, and that. So, it's already got a lot of parking there. So, I'm 100% for the project, but I'm just getting worried that we keep saying, okay, well, a variance for the parking, a variance for the parking. And sooner or later, it's going to bite us in the butt.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. All right. The next item up is with regards to a report from planning for DVP 2326 at 3346 6th Avenue East, with a recommendation that council proceeds to statutory notification process for development permit 2326. Councillors Niche, Councillors Cunningham, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. And that brings us to item number 6D, the late item, and it is a recommendation that council provide direction to staff to allocate time towards applying for funding. That council provide direction to staff to work with the community champion or champions on implementing a heritage project if successful with grant funding. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Niche, Councillor Forrester. Just for clarity, for people at home don't have an opportunity to see what we're looking at, there is an opportunity. We've been invited to apply. Japanese Canadian Legacy Society, a BC-based society set up to oversee the implementation of legacy initiatives with regards to the history of Japanese Canadians, has invited the City of Prince Rupert to apply for funding to implement a heritage project that would recognize Japanese Canadian contributions and communities in Prince Rupert pre-war, as well as the effects of Japanese internment camps on Japanese Canadian communities. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We move on to bylaw. We have one bylaw, bylaw number 7A, Prince Rupert zoning amendment bylaw, that council proceeds with fourth and final reading of the City of Prince Rupert zoning amendment bylaw number 3505. Can I have a motion, please? Councillors Adey, Councillors Forrester. Any questions, comments? This was one that was waiting for approval from Ministry of Transportation. We've now received it. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Council roundtable. Comments or questions from council? Councillor Cunningham, you had a question.
Well, it's been brought to my attention that enforcing our noise bylaw is very difficult, if not impossible. And I was wondering if we could get staff to take a look at that noise bylaw and put some teeth in it. so
Dr.
that it identifies particular problems in the city. Like, the way it was explained to me, unless it's a particular, like Island Trucks or, a party or something like that, if it ever goes to court, we're going to lose in court.
Yeah, so I'll make a comment and then I'd ask for staff comment on it. But I think clearly this has been an issue brought by a particular citizen around a particular issue of which, after investigation, he and he alone is the only one that seems to have any concern over it. The neighbors around him don't. The businesses around him don't. And the noise level is the noise level one would expect in an urban downtown core 24/7. It's not a residential neighborhood out in a quiet part of town. It is a urban downtown core that has trucks and traffic and whatever. So we can tighten the bylaw to make it more restrictive, but you've got to be cautious how you walk there, because there's a certain amount of urban downtown noise that's just going to be, and we're much quieter than most urban centers, but anyway, Dr. Buchan, I'll turn it over.
Your Worship, I understand the idea of reviewing the bylaw is with respect to ensuring that its regulations are enforceable, and not to actually increase be more restrictive, but for example, if the bylaw says you can't have any noise or noise that is too much, what is too much? Right. So if the general principle is if a bylaw is too vague, the lack of certainty makes it unenforceable. You won't get very far in the courts. So if that is the intent of reviewing it, I think that we can fit it into our work. Try to fit it into our work program for this year, knowing that we just added a whole bunch of items for the work program for this year, but we can certainly do that and see if there's an easy fix.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great answer. My concern always when we have these conversations is that we add to your workload, which is a strategic workload. And I would hope that you take those requests and treat them strategically and let us know when they can't be done, or what you might have to drop to get that done.
So without it being direction at this point, I can say that we'll look and see how much work is required for that. And when we come back to strategic plan, we can address the point.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? I have only one, and that is I attended the BC Natural Resources Forum last week, and I drove to Prince George. I drove out on Monday and I drove back on Thursday. Managed to get in between all of the snow and whatever. I can say this because it was public, that the Premier mentioned in his speech the Resource Benefit Alliance, and I made sure I was sitting right in front of him and led the applause when he did that. But my comment tonight is for the sake of Councillor Forster, because I want to tell you that I took 7 kittens to Prince George, and I came back with 2 cats and probably 10 kennels, all empty. And so I had company both ways. Anything else? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillors Niche, Councillor Cunningham, all in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you all.